Hey, college wrestling fans, it's JT1Wrestle here. I once again want to welcome back to the show a fellow aficionado and fanatic of collegiate wrestling. Please welcome Aaron the Swayze.
Hey, good to be here.
Guys, every single year, I have been a college wrestling fan. I've been following this sport since I was a little itty bitty grasshopper. So it's been, I don't even know, I'm not good at math. I watched my first duel back in 1991 or 1992. It was during the 91-92 season, whether I went between October and November and December, or I went to the duel in January. I don't know, but it was during that time. And every single year, I mean, for the past 30 some odd years, close to 40 years now, everybody always talks about the time when they allowed NCAA Division II and NCAA Division III champions and sometimes runner-ups as well into the NCAA Division I tournament. And there's a lot of people that want to see that happen again. So the first thing I want to do real quick is just talk about the history real quick so we understand what we're talking about. From 1928 to 1962, there was just one tournament. Okay. Everybody participated in the same tournament. Well, with exception to the NAIA guys. That was from 1928 to 1958. And then the NAIA got their own tournament in 1959. Exactly when the NAIA wrestlers stopped showing up to the NCAA Division I championships, I'm not sure on that year. Do you know that information, Sways?
I don't. I know there's some nuances of national duels they were able to compete in, but that's a whole different topic.
Right, exactly. And then starting in 1963, the NCAA broke off into a college division. So then you had the NC what we call today the NCAA Division One teams, and then we had a tournament for the NCAA Division, what we would call today the Division Two and Division Three teams. And then in 1974, that split again into NCAA Division Two and NCAA Division Three. So from 1963 to 1989, if you were a Division Two champion or Division Two runner-up, you were eligible to participate in the NCAA Division One championships. And from 1974 to 1989, if you were an NCAA Division Three champion, you were eligible to participate in the NCAA Division One championships. Now, once in a while, you'll go back through brackets, you'll find D2 guys who were third who got to participate. You'll also sometimes find D3 guys who were second that also got to participate. That was a system kind of like what we work today with our at large and wild card system. It was the those who decided who got to go and who didn't get to go, the committee looking at them and calling them like a wild card pick. That's how that happened. And then also in 1990 and 1991, there was a grandfather system, and that was put in place for Dan Russell, a four-time NCAA Division II champion from Portland State, who had participated in the NCAA Division One championships as a freshman and sophomore, and they wanted him to continue participating in his junior and senior years, so he got grandfathered in. And then after 1991, you no longer saw the NCAA Division Two and NCAA Division Three wrestlers in the national tournament for Division One. So I think the first thing you got to do when looking at this is look at the pros and the cons. I personally, when I sit down and I analyze it, I think there's a lot more cons in this than there is pros. I understand the pros of it. I see that there it would be exciting to see how these guys would do. So my first point that I'm gonna make, so that way it's not just me talking the entire time. I'll let Sway say some stuff too. Is I think a lot of the problem is that in the sport of wrestling we over romanticize a lot of things. I think we try to see things as being more romantic than what they actually are. If you go back and look, yes, every year from 1963 all the way up to 1989, and even 90 and 91 for the grandfather rule, you would see certain wrestlers from the lower divisions come in and do very well. But most of the time, what you had is you had, say, usually it was between like 24 and 31 wrestlers from the lower divisions come in. Most of them. nearly all of them either went 0-2 or 1-1. There's always be a handful here and there, but these were the exceptional guys that would go, make the round of 12 or make All American, or, you'd have really super exceptional guys like Ken Mallory of Montclair State who would win the national championship. Personally, this is my first point. I think that the gap has widened over the years. I think the gap now between D1 and D3 is, might as well start in Los Angeles and end up in New York. It may not be as big with NCAA Division II, but I still think it's very, very large. Are you still going to have guys that would do well? Yeah. If Josiah Fry would have competed in NCAA Division I championships last year, I think he would have pulled off some big wins and even made the award stand. And this year we get to find out. I'm never good at pronouncing his name. Massimo Indini. Am I saying that right? Be wrestling for
Oh,
Iowa this year.
Masama Indine.
And Dean, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about butchering his name. He's going to be competing for the University of Iowa this year. So we get to see firsthand a three-time NCAA Division III champion, and we get to watch him and see how he does against Division I competition this year. And then, of course, last year we had Shane Legal, University of Wisconsin, a former Loris wrestler, a national champion in his own right, national runner-up. I think the year before he wrestled D1, and he won the Midlands, and then um, he beat an All American at the NCAA Division One tournament, even though he himself was not a All American. So that's my first thought on the topic. And after rambling on for 2.5 minutes, I'll let Sway say something about it.
Yeah, the downfall of letting the smaller colleges into the tournament, I think really um, started in the 1987 season. And the 87 season was very interesting in a few regards because the previous year, 1986, was the last year of the unlimited weight class. So, why I bring this up is the following year, a guy that was a freshman in 1986 did not qualify for the D1 tournament, and that is Carlton Hasselrig of UPJ. He then goes on when they made it a 275 weight class, dominates, and he takes the next three titles at D1 or D2 and D1. The 1987 D2 or D1 finals was a rematch of the D2 finals. So you had the two finalists from D2 in the D1 championship. And I think what started happening is you get some of these smaller teams or smaller Division One teams that we used to call 1AA in football. They're now FCS type schools that were sitting back going, maybe not the coaches themselves, maybe some coaches, but for athletic directors, it doesn't look good when little Division Two, middle of nowhere Edinboro, um, and because they had several finalists. In fact, they placed as a team when they were D2, or it might have been in the transition going into D1. But Edinboro, Pitt, Johnstown, you talk about Montclair State. If you're getting beat to the podium by these guys, I think it really started. It was right in that middle of when we started seeing programs drop. And so I really think it was a catalyst. Now, I'm not blaming Carlton Hasselrig, but I think his success and the success of others that were really high and elevated, it could be a little bit of a butterfly effect. And, in terms of whether or not I would like to see those lower divisions back in the NCAA tournament, I wrestled at a D2 school. I do not want to see that. I'd be for other opportunities. I am somebody who competed in the Cliff Keens. I'm absolutely pissed at the leadership there for not allowing D2s in anymore. And honestly, I think it might strengthen or toughen up the Reno Tournament of Champions, who still opens their arms and lets some in. I think there's a time and place for everybody to come together. I just wish some of the rules regarding, your strength of schedule and things like that. We used to see everybody wrestle everybody, and I like that for opens. I like that for invites. Um, I remember going to an open at Central Missouri, and Iowa brought their starters. Oklahoma State brought their starters. I mean, I remember watching Zach Esposito and Tion Ware wrestle in a quarterfinals at an open in Central Missouri, Warrensburg, Missouri. I mean, come on. Now we are at that level of, oh, we can't wrestle this division because it doesn't matter. It doesn't count. I just wish we had like this big national database of strength. If you've got so many wins here and so many wins there, otherwise, in my personal opinion, these D1s that are too good to wrestle anybody and everybody, maybe they shouldn't send their damn red shirts to opens hosted by NAIAs and D2s. But that's a whole nother mountain and a molehill. So
Said so much right there. There's so much to digest. One of the first things I want to say is yeah, I mean, you had not only the individual wrestlers from NCAA Division II and Division III sometimes doing very well, sometimes you had teams. I mean, go back through Southern Illinois Carbondale, Cal Poly, Cal State Bakersfield, Northern Iowa. On this, I wrote a giant article if anybody wants to take a look at it. And, it's an overview of the entire time when D2 and D3 were allowed in NCAA Division One. You can ask me for that article, or you can go online and look it up. You can probably find it. Yeah, so you had the teams that did very well sometimes too. Did those smaller teams, NCAA Division Two, NCAA Division Three, that would sometimes place in the top 10 at the NCAA Division One tournament as a team, did that have anything to do with other programs being eliminated? I think that's a little bit of a stretch. I mean, sometimes, correlation and causation do relate to each other. Other times they don't. Did we lose a ton of teams between 1963 and 1989? Yeah, we lost a ton of teams, but probably for other reasons. The other thing that you stated in there is the idea that it's not that we don't want to see D2 and D3 competition against D1 competition. We love seeing it. Anytime there's a major duel, like for example, the University of Wyoming is traveling to, not them coming to them, but Wyoming is going to Western Wyoming this year for a duel. That's huge. We love seeing that kind of stuff. Glenville State every year. They always have D1 competition on their roster. They defeated Kent State, I think, last year, and then they were probably one bad match away from knocking off Buffalo. So yeah, we like seeing that stuff. Now, me personally, what I would love to see, and what I have been preaching about, and if I had any power or any money or any sway, there we go, any sway whatsoever, here's what I would want to do. Over the years, and there's nobody that can deny this fact, the Midlands has become an absolute shadow of itself. It has become so watered down. I mean, we're talking about what at one time was the toughest tournament in wrestling, period. Even tougher than the NCAA Division One championships. And if you doubt me on this, I can go back and prove. There are years where the national champion in D1, finished in sixth place. Not like he made it to the semifinals and then forfeited his next two matches. No, as in he wrestled every single match and he lost three times and got sixth place, and then went on to win the NCAA Division One championship. That's how tough the Midlands used to be. What I would love to see, and what I want the Midlands to become, since it's become so watered down, and Iowa no longer participates, a lot of people no longer participate, and they no longer send their starters, they send backups and reserves. I would love to see it be, let's have this be the college Olympics, the college national tournament. That's where I would love to see the best of the best in D3, D2 go up against D1. It should happen at the Midlands. That's my opinion. That's what the Midlands should become.
yeah, and I tell you what, the Midlands, I like that too, because Midlands is basically one of those holiday time tournaments, during that winter break. And um, the Midlands itself is such a historic tournament that I don't want to say it doesn't mean anything now. There's so much prestige still around it. You win the tournament, you get a coat, basically a Letterman's jacket, which is just sweet in itself. But when you look at, the history of that tournament, they used to do team scores as well. 1991, kind of in that wheelhouse of when the smaller divisions quit being able to go to the D1 tournament. They quit doing team scores for 91. They brought it back for 92, and then 93, 94, 95, no team scores at Midlands, which is interesting. I don't know the whole nuance of that. Another topic, but um, I really think, jumping back to the D1 finals real quick, is I think a reason why I don't personally like it for the small divisions anymore. You want a national title, you're looking good and great. Then you go to the D1 tournament and go 0 and 2, and I mean it might have been 0 and 2 and bad 0 and 2. Like you might have got tech falled and you might have got pinned. To me, it discredits what you've done. Um, because you are the national champ, but some people will then say, yeah, only at this, only at that. Um, I harp on kids now that, hey, a national champion is a national champion, because you could still say that and you could probably get a job coaching by using that and saying, oh, I was a national champion at Grandview. Okay. Or were you a 4-year bench rider at, I'm just using the D1 team that's closest to me, University of Nebraska. They had a 4-time state champion on their roster that never was a starter. And so it really gets into so many wrinkles and stuff. But, the whole, I just feel like it discredits the hard work that you've done to do that. Now, something out of the box I would love to see, the D2s and D3s are the same weekend, and they're the weekend before D1s. Here's what I wouldn't mind seeing. How about all the D3 champs and the D2 champs meet on the Wednesday before D1s at whatever city the D1s are in, and let's bring some D1 folks together. It doesn't need to be at the same venue where the D1s are going to be. It would look like a shell of an audience, but host it at a local high school or gym, and pack that, and let's have like an NWCA small college scrap. Hell, add the NAIs, add the JUCOs. Let's highlight them in that way. But no, yeah, for the NCAA D1 tournament, no. Sit back, enjoy, be a fan.
Shoes right there. I mean, that's one of the things that's so weird about wrestling to me sometimes, and how we value one another, and how we give each other prestige, or we don't. I mean, there are wrestlers at the D1 level. I mean, we see it every year. If you pay enough attention, you'll see guys that have been on D1 rosters for 4 years. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody ever talks about them. Nobody remembers them. And suddenly it's like they're like, "You know what? I've been at D1 now for my entire time. I'm graduated. Let's see if I can wrestle someplace else." And they choose to wrestle Division 2 or Division 3, and suddenly it's like, oh, I've never heard of this guy before, and he's now ranked number 4 in NCAA Division 4. Who is this guy? And you look him up, and you're like, oh, he's a transfer from Pittsburgh, or a transfer from Iowa, or a transfer from Oklahoma State, and now he's wrestling at wherever, and he's doing great. You see a lot of that, whether people want to admit it or not. I mean, I can go through all of my, I keep these things. This is wrestling thing. You probably can't read it too far away, but I keep all the tournaments and all of the duels and everything in these notebooks that I do. And you'll see these guys, these former Division 1 wrestlers who were backups, who had records of, like, their record in D1 was like 11 and 27. Then they'll go into D3 or D2 and have a great time. I don't think people understand that or realize that sometimes. And there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, when you go and you turn on the radio, not everybody can sing like Mariah Carey, right?
Mm,
Not
yeah.
everybody has that range. Not everybody can hit all those notes. Does that mean somebody that can't sing that well, that can sing, that we shouldn't I credit them? No, it's not any different than it is with wrestling. It's still great wrestling at D3, D2, NAIA, NJCAA, California's, the women's, everything else. It's all great there. D1 just happens to be at another level, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, look at me. As a human being, I can bench press 405 pounds. To some people, that's impressive and amazing. I've gone into the gym before. I've seen guys put up 700 pounds. I'm sure the guys putting up 700 pounds probably look at me and think that I'm a weakling, that I can't do crap. So I'm kind of rambling here a little bit, but to your point, that's part of the point that you're trying to make there, is that, you know, it's like I don't even know what to say about that, you know. But anyway, the next point that I want to go to here is, I think a lot of fans do not understand just how difficult it is to be top 33 in NCAA Division 1. They don't
Mm.
give the proper amount of credence to the fact that if you qualify, that's a big deal. I think there's I think in a lot of times, from perspective, all we care about is who's going to be the national champion. Sometimes we care about who's going to make the top 8 and who's going to be all American. And then after that, we really don't seem to care too much. And we probably should, because it's very, very difficult to be top 33. These aren't just handed out. It's not just like, oh, just as long as you're decent and good, you're good to go. For example, Franklin Gomez, a national
Uh,
champion. There was a year he did not qualify. Tyron Woodley, the University of Missouri, now a UFC MMA superstar. His sophomore year, he was an All American. His junior year, he did not qualify. And then his senior year came back and placed seventh. I could give you a ton of examples like that. I want fans to realize it's not easy to be top 33. And the idea of NCAA Division II champion, NCAA Division II runner up, and NCAA Division III champion replacing three D1 wrestlers, I don't like that idea. I'm very, very against that.
yeah, and I mean, I hate to say this about any D1 program or any program in general, but I think you bring back that qualifying of those smaller divisions, and you're going to see it really hurt a SoCon, the Southern Conference, that
Or a Mac.
um, or MAC. I mean, they don't qualify a ton, and we got to talking about, are there individuals that do go from one division and then come up to D1 or vice versa? One of the names that's probably going to slip a lot of people's minds, or they just don't know about. Currently on Intermat, there's a guy ranked 31st in the country at heavyweight, Dalton Meyer of Bellarmine. If you have not keyed in on this kid, he is going to be a very dangerous kid. He's the top rated guy coming out of the SoCon. Probably should have qualified last year, but he previously was at an NAIA school, and then they transitioned. And as they were transitioning, he was on that NCAA, which for a lot of schools, as they're transitioning to another division, it allows them to still have a postseason. He didn't win that tournament either, but I'm telling you, NAI, NCAA, he is a legit. He might be a 2-2, might be a blood round guy potentially. He's got the talent, but he's at D1 now. And that's the thing. If you prove yourself, Masama Indine, Iowa, there's so many others that I know I'm forgetting, but because of that little blanket rule now, too, where NAIA didn't count. So you've got some NAIA guys popping into D1 now. You got some JUCO guys that are finding that extra year of eligibility and hopping in. I think it's exciting. I really do, because we want to see how they do as well. But that whole, it's still the discredit your championship thing. For me, it's yeah.
This is where I'm going back to wanting to see more of that in NCAA for the Midlands, because you just got through bringing up Dalton Mayer. 2 years ago, he was the only non Division One wrestler to place at the Midlands, and then last year he was the only, uh, not last year, but when he was still wrestling at St. Thomas, I believe he was the only non D1 wrestler to place at both the Midlands and the Southern Scuffle in the last couple of years. I think when he
I
placed at the Scuffle, he might have been wrestling for Bellarmine already, but he might have been wrestling for St. Thomas.
I and I don't think it was St. Thomas.
Thomas More.
Thomas,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. I knew there was a Thomas in there, but
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
was
don't know
I,
why I
I was
said
kind of
that.
tracking with you. I'm
And
like,
I,
wait, that's
and I talk to the coach all the time. He's gonna be like, "What did you say?" Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Um, I think you might be right. And, I do think in the last several years, well, let's just go since 2000, even. There's some guys that I would have banked, absolutely banked placing at the D1s. And a lot of it comes back to Carlton Hasselrig. I think a lot of
Yeah,
them were a heavyweight. You tell
sure.
me Tervel Delagnev wouldn't place at D1s? I'd call you crazy. Les Sigmund, who beat Delagnev like a drum several times, would have absolutely placed. They both were represented the U.S. Um, it, and it's not that we don't love our small division wrestling. You and I are probably two of the biggest
Say
fans
if
of the
anybody
small
if
division.
anybody follows JT1 Wrestle and doesn't think that I love small college wrestling, it's like they are not paying attention. I mean,
Oh,
come on.
exactly.
You just got through doing some awesome play-by-play and color commentary at Southeast Community College, and then I just got through doing St. Ambrose down in Davenport here not too long ago. So I think we've proven ourselves and proven our passion and love for small college wrestling. Stacy Barons, another fellow wrestling fan, fellow wrestling aficionado, and a guy that I think everybody should be following on Twitter because he's got a lot of really good insight and a lot of great opinions. Well, I don't want to replace anybody. He said, I don't want to replace anybody at the bracket. He goes, what I want to do is add three more. So instead of a 33-man bracket, we have a uh, 36-man bracket. I don't know if the NCAA would be okay with having those three extra matches. I don't know how they would tackle that, how they would look at that. If we were to ever go to that, it'd be easier to talk JT1 Wrestle into a 36-man bracket than it would be to talk me into replacing three D1 guys with two D2 guys and one D3 guy. Personally, I would say that if we were to do that, I don't because you don't they don't wrestle each other most of the time. We
Hmm.
don't see this guy versus that guy, so we really wouldn't know. I don't know how you could seed those guys any higher than than 36th, 35th, and 34th. Some people wouldn't like me saying that, but I think that's would probably be the most fair. What I would really, if we're ever going to do this, and it's going to be like, okay, we're doing this, it's inevitable, this is going to happen. What I would really like to see, and I'm sure that everybody, this is one of those, those memes they make where the guy is standing in the middle
Hmm.
and everybody has a sword pointed at him. This is me right now. Okay, I'm saying something that nobody else is going to agree with. What I would want to see is the D2 champs and the D2 runner-ups and the D3 champs. I'd want to see them put into conference brackets.
Oh,
I want to see them put into the nearest conference that they're in, nearest conference that they're at, and that would probably open up another can of worms too. But in my opinion, if you're going to qualify for D1, then qualify for D1. Does that make sense? That's how I look
yeah.
at it.
Yeah, I go through the D1 gauntlet of a tournament, and I think that would actually open up some things that would be better because right now you have uh, D1 or D2, D3 conferences. The following week is the D1 conferences. Then it's the D2, D3 nationals. Then it's D1 um, national tournament. Now, at the junior college level, it's all squirrely. Some teams will have their qualifier 3 weeks before
Yeah.
the tournament, but others will
Yeah.
have it 2 weeks before. And so
Yeah.
that's all over the place. I don't want to see that, but I do like the 3 week break. I like the fact that if somebody gets dinged up real bad at their regional qualifier, their conference, then you've got some time. I think that would open up that if we did have like a D2, maybe there's 2 weeks after, and then everybody comes to the conference with the D1s and D2s and D3s. And then from there, I'd be fine with another 2 weeks or another 3 weeks. But I think that late in the season, I don't think you'll have many coaches that say, okay, rest is bad right now. Although you might have some that go, the season's too long.
Well,
Uh,
I
but
guess I guess I that you bring up 2 points here that I got to address. The first point that I have to address is that when you go back and look through the years when they were eligible to compete, there were always wrestlers. It's like, well, why didn't this guy compete? This is an
Hmm.
NCAA Division II champion, and he did not compete in the NCAA Division One tournament. And here's an, there were years where if you look at how many wrestlers were eligible to compete in the NCAA Division One wrestling tournament, it was never 100%. There were always guys that didn't come. So that begs the question: why weren't they there? They were eligible. They had qualified. So why weren't they allowed to come? I'm wondering if part of the reason might have been cost. You know, they already put so much money into traveling to the NCAA Division II tournament, whatever that cost. And then suddenly, let's say that it's a school in California or it's a school out east in like New York that you wrestled for, and now you got to travel all the way to St. Louis, Missouri for the NCAA Division One national tournament. I wonder how many of these schools could actually do that. That would actually have the budget and the
Yeah.
resources to be able to even do that. And then the yeah, there was another point I wanted to bring up too, but I forget what it was now. So
Yeah.
go ahead there.
I, and you talk about just some of these programs, some of the better programs out there too. Um, Nebraska Kearney, defending D2 national champs. A lot of people just think they're sitting on a full roster of all scholarship, like it's just handed to them. They fundraise a ton. They host some of the biggest tournaments for youth, high school, and college, and bring in a lot of money. But you also got to think they have to pay officials out of that. They have to pay a lot of other people out of that. But still, they do a lot of extra work. They do big camps. And I mean, extravagant. Like when you're looking at their camps, they throw down a lot of mats. Their tournaments, the Loper, it's the Eunice Hospitality Open that they host. There is like 28 mats. It's massive, and it's a production. And there's a lot of D1 schools that show up, and definitely a big healthy mix of everything else. But the haves and the have-nots, it's so different. Even though Carney is so good and might have a certain budget, my beloved Broncos of UCO, so good, have a certain budget. They're still not at the same level of, say, oh, Michigan or a Penn State, which have that. They also have that D1 revenue share from their football that goes into a big pot as well. So yeah, it's absolutely the haves and the have-nots that, and that comes back to, would it be a discrediting to try to get there? What barriers do you face? I think there's so much to really unfold there.
Talking earlier about having that 3 week period where we could possibly do it where there's all the qualifiers and then you have another 3 weeks before you did a big tournament. We already compete enough as it is with basketball, and we lose a lot of fans because of the basketball happening when it happens. And some people argue that wrestling fans and basketball fans are two different people, but I know for a fact that just traveling with the University of Iowa fans for years and years and years, a lot of those people are also huge basketball fans as well. And I'm sure that Iowa's not the only school that's like that. So I would say that, man, if you had a 3 week period where there was no wrestling at any level at any division, like we have to go an entire 21 days without any college wrestling, I think that would severely hurt the national tournament.
Mm.
Because I think that a lot of people, I really do, especially maybe not so much for those that are going to the national tournament, like the live audience, but the television audience, I think it would kill that. I really do.
Yeah, it's, and there's, even though we have more opportunities out there to watch wrestling, I could definitely see that. And as you're transitioning into other sports, we have so many fans that are coaches at the high school level and would miss out on potentially attending. It's enough in that ghost time, as I say, where there's nothing going on, that allows it to be kind of like, I know it always seems to happen at spring break time when my kids are on spring break. So a lot of people are able to attend the D1s. But yeah, I see your opinion, and I know we're running low on time, and we may have
Yeah,
to make this a two-parter.
it may be right, huh?
Um, but yeah, the thing that we got on D2, D3, NAI coming to D1, I think a lot of people might be surprised that we're against it. We
Yeah.
might have some small college coaches that will be absolutely pissed at us. But you know
Oh
what?
yeah, I already know
They're-
one that probably already will give me some opinion on it. I don't doubt that at all. And then also, just recently, opening up a new can of worms here, and we're down to the last couple of minutes. Might not be able to get Swayze's opinion. I'll try to make this quick. NCAA wrestling, NAI wrestling, NCAA so far we for women's wrestling we just have NCAA wrestling, right? Everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's wrestling each other, so on and so forth. It was announced, I think, either just yesterday or perhaps it was announced the day before. NCAA Division III will officially sponsor women's wrestling. Right now,
mm.
who likes it? Who doesn't like it? I know. I can't think of his name right now. You're better with names than I am. North Central's women's coach hates it. He's against it. He does not like the idea of only being able to wrestle at the national tournament against D3 girls. He wants to continue being in the D1 tournament. There's somebody that's against it and somebody that would disagree with us on how we stand.
Well, I tell you what, I've actually been for D3 and D1 having the separation, or the NCAA separating
Same here.
it for the
Same here.
women's. And the reason why is there are so many schools, and it comes back to that tier thing we were talking about too. Of course, Iowa's winning the damn NCAA tournament. You have
Yeah.
Big Ten money. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
if another Power Four conference added wrestling right away, they should be in the top five. Look at all the D1s that have women's wrestling right now that actually have a program. They're top 10 all the time. There's some nuances of there's other battles too outside of this D3 thing. Do you even want to officially be an NCAA team? Because Oklahoma State's got one hell of a women's team coming up, but they're not NCAA. They're attending the U.S. Open and all that, which some others are doing, but their focus isn't about an NCAA title. Now, will they add it as an NCAA sport? Probably. Will they be in the top three? Probably, but it's a whole other thing. I think D3 is great. I think it also forces the D2s and D1s to get their ass in gear and add more teams.
Same here. I think a lot of it, and and I'm not trying to pick on anybody or say anything, step over my hinges or however that's, said, out of line. But I think a lot of it comes down to it's like a kind of a pride thing. Yeah, North Central being able to kick the shit out of a lot of D1 teams, that is cool. That is pretty neat. But I don't know if it takes any way less, from the fact that they can beat, and win the NCAA Division III tournament once we, see that come into play. Um, because like it or not, there's probably a lot of NCAA Division III women's wrestling teams that would be unable to compete against the Iowas and, like you were saying, the Oklahoma States and the other powerhouses in D1. Anyway, guys, this is going to shut off on us in about 45 seconds. So I'm going to end this today. I want to thank Swayze once again for being a part of it. We are both on the same page. We are against the idea of D2 and D3 participating in D1 national tournament. I hope with as much rambling as I did, you know, Sway's a little more coherent than I was on his opinion. I hope we have made our points, and I hope that we did it in a substantiated and warranted way. So, from JT1 Wrestle, you guys all take care, and we'll see you next show.